In this lesson, we're going to take sort of a slight sidestep from the topic of working with user classes and look at how we can more flexibly display messages in the views that we display for our user. And it's not totally unrelated because most of the situations in which we want to display messages, or many of them at least, are related to user actions. So when we log in or register a new user, we'll frequently want to give them some kind of message around why their request may have failed, why their data didn't validate, things like that. So it's not totally unrelated, but it doesn't have anything specifically to do with model classes or with creating new model classes and working with them in Flask. Okay, so the idea we're going to introduce is the idea of a flash message. And so we've seen how we can pass data into a template and use that in the template using the render template function. So for example, if I wanted to pass something in to this render template call, I could say, something like message equals, some message to the user, please log in. And then on the template side, I could pull that out and display that as part of my template. So that works well for a lot of purposes, to display data to the user in a template, to pass it in via that sort of format. But for messages that are more of a status or sort of informative nature, there's a much more powerful and flexible way to do this, and that has to do with the concept of a flash message. So I want to introduce exactly what a flash message is just through some different use cases. So let me go ahead and come back to the top, and we're going to need to add a new import to our file. So let me import the flash function. This is a function. And then down below, let's just go to a place where we want to give the user a message. So say right here, after the user has been authenticated and we've logged them in, let's go ahead and send them a message via the flash function that says logged in, just to verify that they actually logged in successfully. Okay. So this will basically put this message in a little queue for us to access within our templates. Let's go into our template and see how we can access it. So flash messages are generally used in some sort of global template or base template because they're something that you want on most pages within your site. So we'll put this in our base.html. We'll put the code that we can use to render messages. So let's see. To do this, I need to introduce a slightly new Jinja block type, and so this is going to be a with block. So we'll say with messages equals get flashed messages, and that will be a function that will run, and that will pull down any messages that have been put into the queue by calling the flash function, and it will return a list of those messages. And so this with block, let me go ahead and close it. The with block basically says set this variable equal to this value, but that variable has the scope of just this block, so that variable only exists within that specific context. So with any messages that I might have gotten from the get flashed messages function, let me go ahead and render them. We can do that with a loop because messages will be a list of messages. So we'll say for message in messages. And 4. And we're going to want to, let's go ahead and put these in a list. So before I start the loop, let's open my UL tag, and after the loop, I will close it. And then within the list, or within the loop rather, I can just display each item of the list. And it looks like I've misnamed that variable. Let me fix that. Message in messages, that looks a lot better. I can just display that message in the li tag. Okay, so let's go to our application and run this and see what happens. So it looks like I'm already up and running. Let's go ahead and log out and see how this works. I've been playing around a little bit before this, just testing out the lesson code. So let's go ahead and log in from scratch this time and see how this works. Okay, and so we see this message displayed up above. So the thing about flash messages that is very useful, there's a couple of things. One is that that message is only rendered in this specific situation. If I refresh this page, that message goes away. It only gets displayed in that one situation where I initially log in. That's because it's just passed in this one place. It's just created in this one place, which has to do with the first time that I come in and the application verifies my password. Okay. The other thing that's useful about this is that notice that there was a redirect here. We didn't render a template. So if we're not directly rendering a template, we can't pass any data into that template. So Flash messages use the session object to store that message for the next time the user comes back. Okay, so let's go ahead and see explicitly how that works. Here, after I add this logged in message, let me go ahead and print to the console. I'll print the session object and just dump everything in that session object out into the terminal, and we'll see what happens there. So to test this, I need to go back and log out. And let's go ahead and, again, log in. Okay, so we saw that message just as before. And again, just as before, if I refresh, it will go away. Let's go to the console and find that dump. So I got a bunch of SQL here. I need to scroll up a little bit to find it. Here is my session object that was dumped to the console. We see there are two things in the session, right? There's my email, which is, we know that that should be in the session because we added it, right? That's how we know that I've logged in. The application adds my email address to the session. But there's also this other key value pair in the session called underscore flashes. And this is a list of Flash messages, right? So this is what is going to be queried by the get flashed messages function. It's going to go into the session, pull any messages out, and render those. So since the session exists from one request to another, these Flash messages can also exist from one request to another. So even when I'm redirecting and it's not possible to pass data into a template, I can go ahead and still display a message, and that message, as long as I retrieve it in the template, will be displayed for the user. Once the user comes in and actually visits that page and that message is rendered, it's then cleared from the session, so it's only displayed once. So calling the Flash function puts the message in the session. Calling get flashed messages clears it out of the session. And we can also have multiple messages in the same session. So let's go ahead and add a couple of additional things that we might want to do to fix this. I got a couple to-dos here. When the login fails, let's remind ourselves of why the login might have failed. This check is saying, does the user exist and does their password match what they say it does? Let's go ahead and add a Flash message that clarifies that. So we'll say Flash user password incorrect, or user does not exist. Okay, and instead of returning that, let's just, we'll continue and we'll put them at the login form, right? So if I exit this conditional, it'll just render the login template again, but then this message will be made as part of that request. So let's go ahead and test that out. I'll come back and log out. And here I need to basically just enter in the wrong password or some kind of invalid, email that doesn't exist in the system. Okay, and we see we indeed get that message passed up there. One additional thing you can do with Flash messages is to add a category that will let you sort of add some specific styling on the front. Let's go ahead and see if we can do that for this error message. When I call the Flash function, I can give it a second parameter, which is the category that we want that message to be a part of. And we can make up the category strings here. We can make these whatever we want. For this one, let me make a category called error. Now, to use this category in the template, we're going to have to modify this loop. And so the way I modify it is I can say for message category in messages. And so this would basically be a tuple, the first entry of which is a message, the second entry of which is the category of that message. I also have to modify this particular function called getFlashedMessages so that it does retrieve the categories as well. And the way I do that is to say that with categories is true. Okay, so then when I retrieve the flashed messages via this function call, it will also get the categories for those messages. And then I can use this category however I like. So here, let me just say class equals category. And so if the category is error, I'll have class equals error, and I can use that as a CSS hook to actually display something. So let me go up and make a style rule at the top of my page and say that class air has text that's color red. Okay. So this class will apply red text styling to any element that has that class. So if I come through and a given message has the category of error, that should be what we see. Let's go ahead and try that again. So let's try the other use case this time just for fun. We'll just enter the wrong password. And it looks like I just have my message and category variables in the opposite roles. Let's come back and fix that. Instead of message category, I should have category message. Okay, that should fix it. Let's try it again. There we go. So if we were to look at this in our developer tools, we would see that this message, obviously the text matches what we passed into the Flash function, but we also see class equals error. That was rendered given this class equals category insertion, and the error came from specifying the second parameter to the Flash function as the error. So you can do this to add different categories, say an information category, which might be colored blue, a warning category that might be colored yellow, etc. So any place that you want to display messages to the user, the Flash function is going to be by far the most flexible and useful way to do that. And it does that by putting a list of messages in the session for that user's next request.